that we have seen a global scale cyber-enabled intellectual property theft attack, which has essentially been conducted by a group called APT-10, who have been enabled by the Chinese Ministry of State Security. How have they conducted this operation? Well, it's through something called managed service providers, and members of the public might not be quite au fait with what that term means. Essentially, it's businesses that provide remote assistance for running businesses, ICT infrastructure and services, and essentially they help manage that externally. So they've been used as a point of entry into businesses across the globe, not just here in Australia. And what we have seen is the exfiltration of commercially sensitive data, and as we have all stated as a community, this goes against the principles which we've signed. So for ourselves in 2015 at the G20, we were part of a group that said that this wasn't an area of activity that's acceptable in the international environment. In 2017, bilaterally between Australia and China, we also reinforced that point and went somewhat beyond that. And agreed those principles. So we feel it's important that, having had those benchmark agreements, that using those as a yardstick, if we feel that that the principles contained within those agreements are being frayed, then we need to make statements around that. So in terms of the overall picture, the impact on Australia, absolutely, we're still trying to assess the exact impact. The Australian Cybersecurity Centre has been engaging with managed service providers and also other businesses that they've seen affected for over a year now, since this was first begun to be discovered, in order that they can assist with the remediation work that's necessary. There's been an enormous amount of advice now published on the cyber.gov.au website, which any business can go onto and have a look at all of the measures that the government proposes for that protective piece can be found, and then assistance provided if required.
So, Mr. Feakin, we've had reference to a group called APT-10 in terms of these activities being undertaken. Do we know if this is the only group that we understand is making these sorts of attacks?
Well, this is the group that we're naming today, and I think if any member of the public wanted to understand more about this group, how they operate and who might have been involved, they only need to look at the level of detail that the US has released through their Department of Justice, incredibly detailed case files that they've put into the public domain so that anyone in the public can get a clearer understanding of who is involved. What we do know is that there is a complex threat environment out there, and there are various groups who are operating at this more advanced level. This group is who we are concentrating on. It's who we are sure, having read the initial reporting last year in April 2017, our own intelligence agencies are very confident in this attribution. So activities that they have undertaken highlight our discomfort in the international environment with this level of activity, and then suggest appropriate remediation methods for the broader community.
Now, you did point as well to the importance of principles that have been agreed to between nations such as Australia and China, but just how effective are those sorts of official agreements in curbing these activities, and can other protective measures be taken?
Sure. So there's a few answers to that question. Firstly, it is vitally important that we have these kinds of agreements and normative principles that are out and agreed to by a broad set of international partners. That's vital that we have these, because it sets the bar. It says that there are certain methods of behaviour in cyberspace that none of us stand by or agree to. Therefore, if you find that after that point, if you like, the principles within that agreement have been pushed over the edge, well, then you have, if you like, the appropriate wording and bridge to be able to come back in a stronger manner, and this is exactly what the government is doing today. More broadly, I think, in answer to your question, what you've seen ourselves as the Australian government, but also as a broader grouping of international partners, is that we've said this is enough now, because we do have broader norms of behaviour in cyberspace. We agreed to 11 of these norms, which Australia puts into its policy documents and its international cyber engagement strategy. And those principles have been agreed by a broad group of countries, including China, Russia, ourselves, US, and others. And they are representative of the global community. And having put those principles into print, we all expect that we uphold those standards that we've agreed to. So as an international community, when we see infringements, if you like, upon those, we are more willing now to voice our concerns, and you've seen that over the course of the last 12 months. So we attributed the WannaCry incident, which many of your viewers will remember, was a ransomware, global ransomware package, which we attributed to North Korea in December last year. We have attributed a whole series of activities, various activities, including the NotPetya malware incident, which took down infrastructure in Ukraine and broader business infrastructure and ICT backrooms across the private sector. We attributed that to Russia. And we've also attributed intellectual property theft at our own universities here in Australia to Iranian sources. So we are prepared as a community to say we have agreed to these norms, but when we see that a country is infringing upon those, then we need to make sure that our opinion that that's unacceptable is clear to as broad a community as possible.
Tobias Beacon, Australia's Ambassador on Cybersecurity. We appreciate your insights with us today. Thank you very much.
No problem. Thanks for having me.